the most simple is like the lead magnet swap. When I first started, I'm like, right, I need to build this community. Right, podcasting is my major thing. I had like a checklist where it was like, all right, cool. I'm going to get this person on my podcast. Alicia's on my podcast. That's step one. I like her. Step number 2 is now I'm going to ask if I can get on her podcast, or if she doesn't have a podcast, like do a live in the Facebook group, if she's got a Facebook group, whatever it is. That's kind of step 2, a bit of exposure there. Step 3 is then a lead magnet swap. Hey, Alicia, I see you got this lead magnet. I got this one here. Do you want to send it to your email list and I'll send it to my email list? That's an easy way that I'd get 50, 100 leads without really doing any extra work. It was just leveraging that one person across those 3 different things. Then if they had the affiliate as well, okay, great. And then that affiliate can work both ways too. Hey, I see you've got this. I'll give it a plug to my people. I've got that. Give it a plug to your people. Or just from that one conversation without even the listeners involved in that. The listeners get the bonus of having that really good content, but that's like a strategy that I've used to build my list and make sales just off the guest.
Welcome to another episode of Listeners to Leads, where I'm helping podcasters launch and maintain a lead-generating show. I'm your host, Alicia Galati, the CEO and head podcast strategist behind Galati Media, a full-service podcast management company. On this show, you'll hear my guests and I discuss everything it takes to launch a successful podcast and keep it running. If you're ready to get leads, land speaking gigs, and create deeper connections with your audience through your podcast, then this is the show for you. Hello and welcome back to another episode. Today we are talking to Jono. You guys are going to love Jono. He is giving some very strategic and practical tips, tricks, strategies for monetizing your podcast with a digital course. Now we're talking the very basics of digital courses, how to create them, what to do, strategies around the podcast, using the podcast to actually funnel people into your digital course. But then we're talking more about Facebook groups as well. And this can be applicable for any group or any social media platform that you are using. So don't worry, we cover those things too. You're going to love this conversation. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Jono to the podcast. Hello, Jono. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm excited to chat with you. So if you could just start by telling everyone who you are, what you do, and about your podcast.
Yes. So I actually do a couple different things. So I'll keep it simple. My major role, I run an online business called Fitness Education Online. In that business, I've got something like 40 different online courses. They're all tailored to personal trainers, fitness professionals. Been doing that a while, really successful business. And I've actually been awarded for the second time now, the Australian Fitness Educator of the Year. So I'm super excited about that. However, I'm starting to get a little bit less passionate about the fitness side of things and more passionate about the online course side of things. So now what I also do is I help other course creators create and sell more of their courses. And I've actually got a podcast in both of those fields, but the Course Creator Community Podcast is the main one that I focus on for that business.
I just have to say, and I'm sure listeners have heard me say this before, I love what you've titled your stuff.
Oh, yeah. I'm Mr. Common. I'm not Mr. Creative, right?
I'm not either. And I'm like, my brain is just very like numbers, data, like what are people searching for? Use that. Yep. Don't call it the Jono show, like call it what people are searching for. And I think that can get missed sometimes because people think, oh, it's a podcast. It's a business. I have to come up with this great creative name. And it's like, it's actually probably better if you don't. So what was kind of that process in like coming up with the name for you?
So my background's more in Facebook groups. It's the exact same thing with a Facebook group. So in my first business, Fitness Education Online, I made the mistake of naming my Facebook group and my podcast Fitness Education Online. And I mean, it's not hard. It is horrible, actually. I guess it's not totally horrible, but it doesn't really target the people that I want who are personal trainers. I don't want people that want to get fit online. I want personal trainers. So I made that mistake early. When I started the Course Creator Community, I started the group before the podcast. It's the exact same reasoning. And I was like, and now I've actually got my little formula where it's like, all right, the formula that I use for naming a Facebook group, which is probably the same as yours for the podcast, which is essentially the who, and then some sort of word like community after it. In a Facebook group setting anyway, it's the Course Creator Community. It's Course Creators United. It's the Course Creator Movement, whatever kind of word you can have there. And I know I'm getting a bit off topic here, but that's actually tip number one. If anyone wants to grow a Facebook group as well, name it something that people are searching, which, same with the podcast. But I'll also share another mistake, Alicia. This is my favorite thing to share. A good buddy of mine over here in Australia. For the listeners, if you weren't aware, I'm from Australia. Might have guessed it, but if you weren't, I'm from Australia. One of my buddies is a mortgage broker. Really smart guy, finance people, way smarter than fitness people like me. And he's got a business called Python Wealth. Right? And I told him about, Facebook groups, this and that. He's like, oh, it's great. I'm going to start one up. So he started his Facebook group and he called it the Snake Pit, right? Get it? Python Wealth, Snake Pit, right?
Yep.
It's clever, it's smart, it's creative, but no mortgage brokers are typing in Facebook the Snake Pit. You know who was getting, Alicia? Snake enthusiasts, right? And there's not a lot of crossover between snake enthusiasts and mortgage brokers. So long story short, that's why I called it the Course Creator Community.
Oh, that's so good. And I harp on this for podcasting to name it something that people are going to be searching for. Name it that if someone were to go to it, they were like, yes, that's for me. Like, that's what you want your audience to feel. And I'm sure the same goes for Facebook groups, but you've used your podcast as like a monetization tool, a monetization strategy, and a community growing strategy. So let's talk those two aspects. First, the monetization, because I know a lot of people are like, I want to monetize my podcast. And I usually am like, okay, yes. And you got to grow some type of community, some type of group, whether it's your email list or a Facebook group or a circle group or a Mighty Networks, or maybe it's your Instagram following. Like, you have to have someone following you before you can actually monetize your podcast. What did that kind of process look like for you in using your podcast to push towards the monetization strategy?
Yes, good question. So because I had the previous business, Fitness Education Online, I had a pretty clear idea of exactly what I wanted to do. And I'm a Facebook group guy. That's what I know. I'm not good at dancing, so TikTok was out of the question. I'm not the best looking guy, so YouTube's out of the question. That's why I like podcast. People tell me I got a good voice for podcast. I used to think that was a compliment, but then I realized what it actually meant. So a Facebook group was one where I can still type stuff, which is fine, but I don't need to be posting selfies and dancing and videos and that kind of stuff there. So I always knew Facebook group was the ticket. And I've got a whole different list of strategies on how to build my Facebook group, but podcasting is one of the best ones for a few different reasons. Obviously, it's good just straight up. I can have a podcast out there. I name my podcast well. I get guests on my podcast. The guests share my podcast. The link to my podcast is join the Facebook group. The person joins the Facebook group. It's just a really good way for me. It's one of my best strategies to grow the Facebook group is via podcasting. It also goes a little bit further than that as well, because it's great for networking. Because if there's someone that I want to do a collaboration with, great. I get that person on my podcast, and then that starts the ball rolling for collaboration, for affiliates, and that's both way side of things as well. So it's like, let's say, for example, Alicia's got a course and I want to affiliate with that course. First, I don't just want to randomly reach out to her. Hey, can I? Maybe she will, maybe she won't. But what's way better? Hey, Alicia, you want to be a guest on my show? Great. We have a guest on the show. We have that conversation. We build rapport. At the end of it, hey, Alicia, I see you've got this course here. Do you want me to plug it to your people? And then same the other way as well. And there's many different ways there, but that's essentially the strategy there. It's like, right, here's my podcast. Grow the following on my podcast. I want those people to join my Facebook group. It even goes further still, because to join the Facebook group, they've got to get on my email list as well. Mm-hmm. So I want that as well. But that's essentially my triage or my triarchy, where it's like, great, I've got this Facebook group, which is the community. I've got my podcast, which is where I deliver my content. And then I've got my email list, which is where I sell. And the reason why I like online courses is it's the least work. That's a lot of work, right? You got to get the podcast, the Facebook group, the email. So at least when I sell something, I want that to try and be as hands-off as possible.
Yeah, that's so interesting, especially because if you think about it, like, people need multiple touch points, right? You can't just, most of the time, you can't just have one conversation and someone can't just hear you one time and think, I'm going to invest in whatever they're selling. I want whatever it is that they're selling. Usually you have to almost whittle away at them for a while. And I think that whole trifecta that you're talking about, where like, yes, they're listening to your podcast, they're getting the education, they're listening to these incredible stories of people that you're connecting with. Like, that's twofold. We're going to talk about that too. I love that strategy. And then going into the Facebook, they can communicate with other people. They can connect with other people. They're seeing that you're leading there, and then getting onto your email list. I'm sure you're educating and informing them there as well. and then making that sell. Like it makes it so much easier because at that point they're like, oh yeah, I know you, I like you, and I trust you. Sure, I'll give you my money.
Well, I'll go further. So right before I got onto this call, Alicia, I just made a sale directly from my podcast pretty much, but with that strategy there. So it was just, I put together a basic 4-week coaching package for someone that wants to create and sell their online course, but I used multiple. So it was like, right, post it on the Facebook group, put it as the pre-roll on my podcast and sent out the email as well. Got the call booked. Got on the call with Laura today and she was like, yep, Jono, I saw the email and then I heard you mention on your podcast, and the podcast episode that I did was actually a live course audit as well, where I was essentially auditing someone else's course. And she was like, then I heard you do that course audit with that person. I'm like, that's exactly what I need. If that's what this coaching person thing is in, shut up and take my money. And I'm like, great.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Going back to your twofold strategy of like, yes, you're giving educational information to those listeners, but you're also connecting with people that could be potential affiliates, connectors, collaborators. I love that. And I think it's such a great strategy because a lot of people, they go into podcasting thinking it's about the listeners. And yes, and I like to say yes, and a lot, because I don't think that everything is as black and white as we really think that it really can be. There are so many gray areas that we can figure out what works best for us and how we like to work. And a podcast is a great way to do that. So you are not only educating your audience, considering them first, making sure that the people that are on your show are actually going to give value to your audience, which is so stinking important. But then also the people that you're talking to can be potential collaborators, connectors, affiliates. And it's that mutually beneficial thing of like, hey, you're on my podcast. You're helping me create content for my audience. Also, if I jive with you, because I feel like a 30-minute conversation is, you can feel somebody out pretty easily. Is this going to work for something maybe long term? Maybe I reconnected with you in a couple months and say, hey, your episode did so great. I'd love to talk again. Let's hop on a quick coffee chat. Like it just opens the door up for so much more. And I love that you're using both of those kind of avenues.
100%. I'll even just share a couple of other things I do with the listeners as well, because the podcast is listeners to leads, right? So it's kind of like a couple of the strategies that I use there. Even just the most simple is like the lead magnet swap. When I first started, I'm like, right, I need to build this community. Right, podcasting is my major thing. Okay, right, every single person, I had like a checklist where it was like, all right, cool, I'm going to get this person on my podcast. Alicia's on my podcast. That's step one. I like her. Step number 2 is now I'm going to ask if I can get on her podcast, or if she doesn't have a podcast, like do a live in the Facebook group, if she's got a Facebook group, whatever it is. That's kind of step 2, a bit of exposure there. Step 3 is then a lead magnet swap. Hey, Alicia, I see you got this lead magnet. I got this one here. Do you want to send it to your email list and I'll send it to my email list? That's an easy way that I'd get 50, 100 leads without really doing any extra work. It was just leveraging that one person across those 3 different things. Then if they had the affiliate as well, okay, great. And then that affiliate can work both ways too. Hey, I see you've got this. I'll give it a plug to my people. I've got that. Give it a plug to your people. Or just from that one conversation without even the listeners involved in that. The listeners get the bonus of having that really good content, but that's like a strategy that I've used to build my list and make sales just off the guest.
Yes. I feel like we could just stop there. There's so much gold there for people. Like, I don't think that people get so hung up on like, okay, the listeners. And yes, I love that people focus on the listeners, but I think that it's not always about the numbers. It's about the connections that you're making with your guests. It's about making sure that you're actually talking to your listeners outside of just your podcast, that you're not just speaking out into the void. So let's talk course creating and digital courses and digital content, because a lot of podcasters, that's one of the ways that they are taking their listeners into leads, right? Where do people get started with like, okay, I have a podcast, I've got a business-ish maybe. How do I turn this thing into a course? What does that kind of look like?
Okay, so there's a few different things. I'll share some of the common mistakes. So the biggest mistake most people make is they actually create the course, right? Now, I've made that mistake myself as well, right? Where I've created a course and I've spent 6 months creating the best course ever, and then nobody wants it. That's the most common thing with course creators. So make sure you don't do that. I'll share the strategy that I use, and I think most people could do something similar to this, but we can go back and forth anyway. So if I have an idea for a course, the first thing I do is record a podcast on that course. Let me give you a live example. So the course that I'm creating next in my fitness education online space anyway is the best way for clients to lose weight. Let's say that. Basically, a personal trainer takes the course. It's going to help their clients lose weight because it's got all the exercises, the diet, the sleep, all that kind of thing there, right? But I'm like, all right, is this actually going to sell? Let me do a podcast episode on it. I do that podcast episode on it. I then promote my podcast in my Facebook group anyway. Hey guys, just released an episode on insert topic. Comment below if you want the link. Now, I do that every week anyway, and I gauge the comments. Sometimes I get 0 comments, right? There's no course there. If I can't even get someone to listen to a podcast on the topic, they're not going to buy the course. Sometimes I get 5, 10. Maybe they'd buy, but it's probably not enough. Sometimes I get 100 comments. That's the ticket. If there's 100 people that are like, yes, give me the link to this podcast, give me this podcast, there's a course in there. Even still though, I won't create the course yet. That's just stacking the odds in my favor and being like, okay, there's some interest in that. What I will do is just create the sales page. I've obviously got the course outline, and it would look something like this. Hey people, I'm putting together a 5-week course on, the best ways to lose weight. Week 1, we're going to cover the exercises. Week 2, nutrition. Week 3, sleep. Week 4, genetics. Week 5, hormones, yada, yada, yada. Once it's complete, I'm going to sell it for $500. But if you want to get in now and get in live, we're going to do it for $97. I then send that email out to my list. I post it on my social media. I mention it on my podcast. I've got the link in the show notes. One of 2 things is going to happen. Either A, no one is going to buy it, which sucks, but it's not horrible because at least I didn't spend 6 months creating that thing and then no one buys, right? I can just find out straight away. No one buys. Okay, no dramas. But if I've done my research correctly, chance I probably will because I've done the podcast strategy. And then if people do buy, great. Then I create the course, but I just do it week by week by week. Now, there's a couple good things going on there. Let's say I just make even 10 sales, for example. Okay, great. There's $1,000. Now I'm actually getting paid to create this course here. It's no longer me creating it, hoping that people buy. I'm getting paid to do it. And there's even more advantages still, but I'm just keeping it simple. I'm getting paid to do it. At the end of those 5 weeks, I record all the teachings. I save them. I might edit them a little bit to make them a little bit better. And then that's my on-demand course. And now I've got an on-demand course that I've got paid to create and that I know there's already demand for, and that I can sell for future like that. It's a great system because you're not wasting any time. You're only putting courses out there that you know are going to sell, but even some other little bits as well. It's forcing me to create the course in 5 weeks, which is great. If I didn't have that accountability, it's going to be 5 months. We've all been there, right? It's like There's nothing more boring than opening up, doing a PowerPoint on your own and then presenting the PowerPoint to yourself, and then you don't know if anyone's ever going to see it, So it gives you that accountability. Right, I've got to just get one PowerPoint together every week for the next 5 weeks. It's tough, but it's not impossible. So it also gives that urgency there. That's the system.
I love what you're saying here. If we could just kind of dial back a little bit, because like you said, so many people will spend months, a year.
So many people, myself, I've been there. Right. I don't know if you have, but
hello.
I've been guilty. Yeah.
It's me.
Yes,
I've been there where it's like, oh, so-and-so told me to create a course. I'm going to create this course. It's going to be great. I have so much knowledge. Yeah. And I love this idea of using your podcast and your podcast episodes as a way to kind of gauge interest in a topic that you can then use further. And
can I jump in for a second as well? Let's say someone's not a Facebook group. It doesn't have to just be Facebook, right? You're an Instagram person, for example. You can still test it there. You do a poll every week. Hey, people, just release this episode. Who wants it, right? Great. Click there. Either way, I just wanted to say, it doesn't have to be Facebook. If someone doesn't have a group, that strategy, even just numbers. Okay, this got the most downloads. There might be interest there.
You put your heart and your soul into your show. And I want to help you reach all of those potential listeners out there. That's why I'm excited to announce my upcoming podcast marketing workshop. It's about giving you practical tools to grow your audience. You'll learn the secrets to getting your podcast discovered, attracting your dream listeners, and boosting those download numbers. This workshop will be hosted live with a replay available on April 30th. You can sign up by going to galatimedia.com/workshop. Let's grow our podcasts together. Yes, I am 100% on board with always looking at your numbers. at least every couple months to kind of gauge where people are, where, like, if you're a guest on a podcast, did your numbers spike? Did they spike and then go back down? What did that kind of look like? Did you get the wrong kind of listeners over? Like, there's so much information that you can see from that. And to your point as well, there are so many different places that you can put this information. Maybe you share the Spotify link on Instagram, or you make a post on LinkedIn where maybe you have more like businessy stuff. Make a post on LinkedIn. You talk about, hey, this is what we talked about. It was really interesting. This guest is really fascinating. Tag the guest. Does anyone want the link? Track how those links are working. If you need to use a bit.ly, if you're on a platform that you're not going to get a lot of information from, use that. I think it's so important, especially to pre-sell the course, because come on, like that is gold. It's so, so important. Otherwise you're going to waste your time, waste your effort, wasting time doing things when you could be doing other money generating activities, right? Like, you're a business owner. It's important that you're making money and that you're able to support yourself and your team. Like, these are important things of being a business owner. So I love that you're breaking it down. And as someone who is, raising my hand over here, a perfectionist, and things have to be perfect and like it needs to be a certain way, I know that if I had 5 weeks to do it live with someone or with a group of people, rather than me whittling away at it and just being like, it'll be done when it's done. Nobody look at it. It's terrible. It would never see the light of day. So I love that strategy so much. What other tips and strategies do you recommend people who have podcasts use with this whole like process?
So another way that I create courses, I've got 3 different ways. It can either be myself, my own course, which is great because I take 100%. It can be an affiliate, which is not too bad, but I got to give away 50% if I'm selling one of their courses, which is okay. Gives them another course. There's other advantages there as well. Another thing I like to do is summits. So let's use that 5-week course as an example. I told a little white lie there. It's not actually me that's teaching that 5-week course. I'm bringing on 5 different experts. Well, I'm doing the exercise one, but like I'm bringing on 4 different experts. I'm bringing on a nutritionist to speak about that. I'm bringing on a hormone expert to speak about that, a geneticist, that, right? So it's a 5-hour course, but I'll get to the podcast in a sec, but I'm just going to pay those people for their one-off session. Hey, Alicia, you're a specialist in this. Can you give a session for my people here? It's $200. Even if it wasn't me, let's say I pay $1,000 to get that course together. Great. There's $1,000. I've done 0 work on myself. They've put together the PowerPoint. They've recorded it. They've sent me the links. They've done the years in study becoming an expert in this thing here. And then I now have a course that I can sell for $500 and I keep 100% of it. How do I find those people and how do I screen those people? Is podcasts for all kinds of things there. I'll do some research. Okay, right. Here's 5 different people that speak about nutrition and weight loss. Let me get all 5 of them on my podcast. Hey, for this month here, the focus is going to be nutrition. I'm bringing 5 of the experts, yada, yada, yada. Little do they know, I'm screening them, right? Because I'm picking the best one of those 5 who's going to be presenting at that course there. Then I'll do the next thing. All right, cool. Let me find who speaks about genetics and that. Oh, there's only one person. Let me make sure they're not boring, right? Let me get them on the podcast. Let me do it because I've made that mistake as well. Before I screened on the podcast, oh yeah, this person looks good on paper. Do you want to do it? They give this boring ass presentation and it's just not good. The podcast allows me not only to build rapport with the person, but also to screen that person as well. I'd call that probably a more advanced strategy because I've kind of got the audience. I'm happy to pay people $1,000 because I know that it will sell. I obviously do the research anyway because I'm posting these. I'm doing the tester with the podcast anyway, and I'm doing the pre-launch anyway, but I know it's going to sell with that there. If you don't have an audience at the moment, it may not be worth it to you to spend $1,000 to get these people because you may not get it back.
Yeah, and I definitely I love that strategy as an advanced strategy because not only are you building rapport with these people and you're also paying them for their time, paying them for their effort and their expertise coming in to teach your class, then you don't have to teach the class. You don't have to show up as the expert every time in every topic. And then it allows you, and I think this is why podcasting. To go to the
pub.
Like you can just go to the pub, like you said. But then also later down the road, if they're doing something, you're going to be top of mind for that other person because you've created yes, you've created such a great connection with them, and they feel like, oh yeah, hey, yeah, you need a course, or someone mentions this. Hey, I did a course, part of a course with Jono.
Yep.
Go head over. Here's the link. And then they get sent over via this person who maybe you had 3 or 4 interactions with. So I love that so much. I did have a thought as we were talking before. And then additionally with this, the whole idea of using the podcast beyond just the podcast. And I've talked about this on the show a few times, but I think this is a great point to make for listeners is for those courses that you're creating. So, Jono, you mentioned you're interviewing 5 people talking about nutrition. There's bonus content for your course right there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those podcast episodes are bonus content that you can then add as like, oh, yeah, exclusive. They're not exclusive. It's just from your podcast. But like, really?
I'll tell you another thing. So here's another way I use it as well. One of my favorite things to do on the Course Creator Community podcast is to get successful course creators on there, because that's what my listeners kind of like. It's like they want to hear someone that, hey, I got this baking course, and as a result of this baking course, I'm now making $10,000 a month, or I've got this piano course. Now, because I've got this online piano course, I'm making $1 million a year. There's some cool stories there, especially the ones that are non-business based. Because, you hear a lot of them. It's like, yeah, I get it, but you're selling money, you're selling baseball game, like it's cool if there's baking or piano or Spanish or whatever, right? And I've got a membership with the Course Creator Community, and one of the modules in the membership is just success stories. It's just straight off the podcast. I've obviously got other stuff in the membership as well that isn't. But then someone posted on the Facebook group. They're like, Jono, I got to say, the best part of your membership is all these success stories from these people from all these different things. Like, they could have got it for free from the podcast anyway, but it just shows that there's value there, because maybe that person wasn't a podcast listener. Maybe they just found me via the Facebook group or online or whatever. They signed up for the membership, and that's content that is still valuable.
Yes. And I'm even thinking like email list. That's something that could always go at the bottom in like a rotation of listen to this success story. Boom. There you go. Content for people who are like, scroll to the bottom. Ooh, success story. What? Like, I love that. Whenever
I have those, it's an email on its own, because that episode is always so popular. It's just like, here's how Liz makes $40,000 a month with her $7 membership. That's the email. Just going straight to the podcast there. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Let's talk a little bit about Facebook groups before we sign off, because I think that this is something that I know I've recently had conversations with people where I'm like, I don't know that it makes sense to start a Facebook group right now. What are your thoughts, feelings, and with everything kind of going on? And we're talking February 2023. If you're listening in the future, hello, future yous. But what do you kind of think about Facebook groups right now?
Good question. So, look, it definitely is hard. When I first started, it was pretty easy. I'm talking fitness education online days, right? It was pretty easy to grow a Facebook group. It's a lot harder now. And part of the reason why I started the Course Creator one was just to see if I could still do it. Because in the fitness education online group, that's got like 17,000 members. It's the largest in the world for personal trainers. But I was like, did I just get in early? Maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe I got in before everyone else, and it kind of kept growing. So that was part of the challenge when I started the course. It was more like a test. If I just start a Facebook group now, I think it was 2020 or 2021 or something, can I still grow it and getting engaged? So short answer is yes, I could, but I know what I'm doing. Even when I was a personal trainer, I was successful at that. A big reason was because of my Facebook group there. So I like it, because I know what I'm doing. I think it's also becoming less competitive as well, because a lot of people are shutting down their groups, right? In kind of my space, Amy Porterfield shut down her group not too long ago, and she's like probably the biggest one there. So for me, that's better, because a lot of people are shutting down these groups, so it's less competitive. I'm also not a fan of the other kind of communities, because I'm already on Facebook. I get this thing, join our community on Circle. Man, do you know how much tabs I've got open right now? There's no way I can fit another thing in there. And then someone else wants it on Discord, and then someone else wants it on that. So just selfishly, I'm just like, I want to have my community on Facebook, because I'm not signing up to any of these other things. I personally like it because it's becoming easy. It's becoming less and less competitive. It's also a lead gen thing for me. I don't use enough on Circle and that kind of stuff to kind of know, but I feel like Facebook's very good at suggesting my group to other people that are in similar groups and that kind of stuff there. So it's just really easy to build my community organically if it's on Facebook. I don't know if it's that easy to do on, Circle and some of this other stuff. Let's speak about the negatives though. It is hard, right? I've got a course on it. Right, I've got a full strategy from everything. Here's how to set it up. Here's how to grow it. Here's how to get engagement. Here's how to get sales. Like, I got a blueprint for it. If you didn't have a blueprint, it's going to be hard just to grow it. But that's, I think, the down point. If someone thinks that, and probably same with most social media, same with podcasting, right? Someone thinks they've had no training in it. They just never listened to any podcasts on how to do it. They're just going to start up a podcast and get all these downloads and monetize it. Like, it doesn't really work like that. So that's probably the biggest down point there. I know there's a lot of people that are there's a lot of kind of, I don't use Facebook, this and that. But I still think it's the biggest platform, or at least one of the biggest platforms out there. So yeah, that's my take. I do like it. I'm biased because I'm good at it. And also my age, I think anyone over about, I don't know how you are, Alicia, but anyone over about 30. Okay, there you go. Well, I found anyone over about 35, they're Facebook people. Right. Mm-hmm. I get it. Not everyone. There's some people that don't use it and younger people and whatever. But yeah, I'm for it if you like Facebook. So I'm for it myself. For someone else listening, if you like Facebook and you're a Facebook user yourself and you're willing to put in the work to learn how to do it, but also to actually nurture it. So when I started any of my Facebook groups, I was in there at least an hour a day, if not more, commenting, posting, DMing, replying, so it's not quite as easy as, I'm going to start a Facebook group and it's going to grow itself. And I already knew the strategies. It's like I knew the strategies and I had to spend an hour a day on there. So bit of a rant, but that's my take there.
No, I definitely appreciate the candidness of that because, like you said, honestly, just go buy Jono's course, right? Quite frankly, if you want to do it correctly. Make sure that you're being strategic, just like I talk about with launching a podcast and having a podcast and growing a podcast. Like if you want it to bring in leads, if you want your Facebook group to create connections and to create leads and bring money into your business, then you're going to have to be strategic about it. You can't just throw spaghetti at the wall and hope it sticks. It's not how this is going to work.
I'll give one quick insight there. The most important part of the Facebook group also is the engagement from other people. That's the mistake a lot of people. There's a few things there. A lot of people, and that's the $1 million question. That's kind of, I guess, my skill set. I know how to make a group engaging with other people posting, not me. So if you go in my Facebook group, Course Creator Community Facebook group, I hardly ever post, but there's a lot of other people posting because that's kind of the community that I've nurtured. But that doesn't just happen. And that's when I speak to Facebook group people, that's the, I guess, complaint they have. Jono, I got this Facebook group, but no one's posting. It's just me posting. And yeah, I might get a few likes and comments, but no one else is. How can I get other people posting? So that's and that's a whole other podcast discussion we can have, how to get engagement in your Facebook group. But that's just a message for the listeners there. It doesn't just happen. You need to have a strategy in place to do that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely really important, especially with Facebook's algorithm and how they want things done. I definitely understand that aspect being important. Where can people find you, hang out with you, get to know you, join your Facebook group? We'll make sure that we have links for all of that stuff in the show notes. But if you could just give us maybe 1 or 2 spots where we can find you.
Yes, easy. Podcast, Course Creator Community Podcast, and Facebook group, Course Creator Community.
Love it. It makes it so easy. Jono, thank you so much. This has been such an incredible conversation. I appreciate your time and all of the knowledge that you've given us.
Awesome. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Listeners to Leads. If you found something in this episode valuable, I would really appreciate it if you shared it with a friend who you know would also get value from it. Want to send me a message? My favorite place to hang out is Instagram. You can find me at alicia.galati. Let me know what your favorite takeaway was from the episode. And don't forget, turning those listeners into leads is actually easy.